Yeah, you see the face, you see the bruises, s- you see the you see the hate. I am breaking out as usual. It ain't my fault. It really ain't, cause I don't know who be touching me and shit. Like these niggas got dirty hands. You feel me? Dirty niggas. You see my skin get oilier, so when it gets oily, it cleanses itself out. But if you have too many other bacteria from other individuals coming in, then this is when it has that irritation and the pimples will show up. I'm waiting on my bus. I got like 10 minutes. So I got 10 minutes to fool with y'all. I don't want to even talk about. I was talking about something on my last break, well, on my lunch break. Feel me? I named that video "There's a Problem on How We Comprehend African Americans or Black Americans." Feel me? And I broke it down the way I broke it down. You feel me? I am what they will call an African. Then you have the Black Americans. I call them Black Americans. I'll call them African Americans. Although the lineage can be traced back to Africa, I feel like it takes away from a person like myself who is really an African American because my parents are directly from Africa and I'm a first generation American, so I am an African American. Feel me? By definition, that's who I am. Now, by definition, a Black American is a American. When we call white people, we don't say white American. We just call them white. So the Black American should just be called black. There shouldn't be no American because it's like either we start calling white Americans and call black Americans black Americans. But when we say black, I think the whole world know what black we talk. We talking about the black American. And when we say white, we talking about the white American. Every other black person has a country attached to his identification. Like me, they call me Ghanaian because I'm from a country named in Ghana. If you look at a Haitian, they call them Haitian. If you look at a Jamaican, they be like Jamaican. But all of us are quite the same. Or if you look at Puerto Rican or Dominican or whatever other places that you can think of. What else? All these other places, you feel me? That's part of the tribes of Israel and everything else like that. So when you look at the black American, how come we just don't call them American? Why do we have to place African American? Or why do we have to place black American? How come we don't say, when we look at the Caribbeans, how come we don't say black Haitians? No, we don't say that shit. That shit sound halfway bizarre. It's like we just associate them with the country that they came from. So I'm trying to make this. I want to make this a fight for the African American, where we just call them American, and we don't have to put the African in front of it. It's about time we just recognize them for who they are. It's obvious. They was here before the Constitution, so before the Constitution was created. You feel me? They was here fighting with other. They was even here fighting against the British once upon a time when they used to colonize American. So that being said, I think I've proven my case that the so-called African American, is American. Although his lineage can be traced back to Africa, the people as a group hasn't been back to Africa in over 500 years. Now, there's always a home for them back home. That's a fact. But at the same time, I feel like they also have a piece of, they have a, not a piece, they have a place here, um, or a land. I was gonna say a piece of land, but but they have a land here called America where they can also call home, and they also have another home back home, which is Africa. You feel me? It is what it is. But if you like, you feel me? It is like if you take a look at the history of it all, right? According to I was gonna say the scripture, but it's a scripture on its own. The slave trade, right? Each They drop people off from each stop. So basically, I'm about to take a bus right now. If the bus dropped me off another stop, that stop will be for the individual that gets off. So that's the same thing with all the slaves that were dropped off in these individual islands, Brazil, the Americans and the Caribbeans and everything else like that. So essentially, they're all the same people. They were just dropped off at a different stop. You feel me? Well, not the same people, but they came from different tribes, but from the same continent. You feel me? But it's like the identity of that tribe was taken away from them when it was dropped off in these locations, and they later on identify with these locations, and they will fight you if you don't call them by those locations. So why should an African American have to settle less when it comes to him being identified that he's American? He is an American. He's not a black American. He's an American, just like if a Haitian was from Haiti, we call him Haitian. We don't say a black Haitian. You feel me? We don't differentiate that. And people be like, oh, because there's different race. No, there's a lot of different race, but they have chosen to call themselves one. You feel me? And that's America, is the United States of America. And America does not differentiate whether it's a Haitian, the Asian America, or white American, or this American. No, we call ourselves American. When we travel to another country, they'll call you, oh, you an American once you start speaking. I swear to God, as soon as you go to another country, they be like, you an American, because of the way you speak and the way you act and everything else. They don't be like, oh, he's a black American. No, they don't separate you like that. We are the only one that separate black Americans from the white Americans or the Native Americans, and it's not happening no more. And from this day forward, the black American is an American, and that's that. The category, they talk about cancel culture. Why don't you cancel that? Cancel the African American thing and call them American. Feel me? They canceling everything else because they're just trying to erase their own history of what they've done, and they're not looking at the bigger picture of how we label people and how we include. It's an inclusive when you do something like that, but it's exclusive when you call somebody else other than what he is. You feel me? If they break it down like the way I broke it down right now, you feel me? It's more like an exclusive. Exclusive sounds like something that is good, but it's really not. Inclusive is good because you're including me in a place where I've been for a very long time. We talking about centuries on top of centuries on top of centuries. Oh my, it's a straight. You feel me? So this is what I'm calling it. I'm calling. I mean, it's something that we have to all overcome. You feel me? First, it went from color people. Then from color people, it went to I think black. I'm black and I'm proud. Now it's African American. What I'm saying, and let's stop labeling. Let's stop trying to misidentify these people and just call them for what they are. Just Americans. That's it. The Native American is an American. They only call him Native because he was the first one here. That when they came here, they call him Native. You feel me? But they don't never call the white American a white American. Because it's like we already give him that respect already. He solidified his position. And he's like, yo, we don't even have to call him a white American anymore. We just call him, and when we think of white, we think of American. In my mind, that's how I see it. You feel me? When I see white, I be like American. You feel? In America, when you see a white person, you just automatically assume, even if it's a white immigrant, he get a pass for being an American. Straight up. And I'm saying a black man should get the same thing too. You feel me? Because there's a lot of white immigrants that come here. The only time you can tell the difference when they start speaking and they got an accent. Think about the biasness. This is what we call systematic racism. Because we doing it automatically without even knowing. We're not even checking ourselves on it. You feel me? But there's a lot of white immigrants that's here too, that we automatically give them the benefit of doubt that they're American, because guess what, they have our counterpartners, which are the white American skin, so we give them that leeway already. You feel me? But when it comes to the black American, it's more like they got all this voter law and everything else like that, but I think I support the voter law in Georgia. Like, I support it. Like, I know every black American has some form of ID, because niggas is driving anyway. You feel me? Most states, you need your ID to drive, unless they're driving without a license. But I support it. You feel me? I support it. I think it's no biggie at all. Honestly, I know people have the oh, they trying to discriminate against us. You know, black people don't carry no ID. That's not an excuse. You Feel me? This is what makes me different from others, because I can agree with you on one thing, then come back and fuck it up, and you hate me on this subject coming up. You feel me? I understand what you're saying. You are a native to this land. You do not need no ID to identify who you are as an individual. I strongly understand that. Trust me, I do understand that. But at the same time, we also have this is not what it used to be. There's a lot of people here. We all look the same and quite similar to each other. So I just feel like every American, in some form of fashion, not just for police stopping you. Now you could go to the hospital or you could go to a bank. You need an ID. You feel me? If you go to a liquor store and you look younger than who you are, you need an ID. So why not you need an ID for voting, just to make sure that we having a fair election? I agree with that. I'm not the one crying over that one at all. I think that's a no-brainer. I'm like, yeah, do that. Like, yes, do that. Like, because Joe Biden stole the last election, so we need to make sure that the next election, all states needs to require ID. Now I know I know my Black Americans or my Americans who are darker skinned. I'm making it complicated. Let's just call it Black American for now. Will be mad at me on this subject, because a lot of black people do not like the fact that they have an ID law, because they feel like that's something that's is to discriminate against them. But I'm like, no, that is actually helping you guys out. So we get to know for a fact what you guys really stand for when you go out there, you make your votes and everything else like that. You just show your ID, and that's that. Ain't nobody going to booth with you to see who you gonna vote for. Half of the time we say that shit freely anyway. You dig? Damn, my boss ain't show up here. I've been talking. You know I can talk. I be losing track of talk when I talk. When I start going, I be going. Anyway, but like I'm saying, like I'm not mad at the white man for solidifying his position where he has that respect when we think of white, when we see white, we see American, we don't even doubt or question him. I don't even think police people ask for ID when they see a white person in his car. You feel me? It sounds foreign when they ask that kind of stuff. We don't even know what they asked them when they pulled him over. Feel me? Sir, you were speeding. The first question they ask a black man is your ID. So it's like, yo, why not carry your ID anyway? You know they're gonna ask you for it, so it's like that's something we ought to carry just for precaution purposes. Now, when it comes to the voting and everything else like that, I feel like when a lot of people who want saying things in their favor but do not have the right form of paperwork could be voting. You feel me? And I don't think that's right. You feel me? I don't think that's right. I really don't. I feel like we can be lenient when it comes to same people and be lenient when it comes to others. I feel like the rules should be followed and should be fair. I strongly believe that. I feel like if you start picking and choosing who you want to apply the laws to, that's when the whole law is not applied. You feel me? When you start picking and choosing and everything else like that, that's not a good thing at all. You feel me? That's not a good thing. So that being said, I feel like there should be a voter's ID. And I think when they say voter's ID, I'm assuming that's like your state, that's your regular ID. That's like, a regular state ID. You feel me? That proves that you are who you are. Now I know people are going to stretch it, and they're gonna be like birth certificate and everything else like that. But they need to have a fine definition. They just need to have a fine definition of what ID is required, and that's that. Like, I know there's gonna be Becky or somebody over there who's gonna be like, nah, I don't believe that's a real ID and everything else like that. You're gonna have individuals like that, but the overall picture is positive for us. You feel me? Now we get to choose our own representatives, and we get to make sure that we have our voice heard through this process and other process that's going to come along that we're going to initiate our ideas upon. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying nothing too crazy. You dig? But when it comes to that, I strongly agree with that. But when it comes to other stuff, I disagree with them. And you can love me one second and hate me the other, and it's like I'm not doing it for the love. I'm just doing it for the truth itself. I want to speak my opinion, and I think my opinion matters just like any other American. And I feel like to be a true American, we should be able, let me repeat that, to be a true American, well, not to be a true American, a real American is an American who's able to speak to another American even though they don't agree with each other, is to have agree to disagree without causing any form of violence. I don't have to hit somebody because they said something that I disagree with. That's un-American. You feel me? As a matter of fact, that is unhuman. to do such a thing. That's an animal's trait. You dig? So it is what it is, man. I will keep talking until the bus comes. So I mean, I already finished with that subject already. But the main reason why I started this is because I feel like the African American is being misunderstood. Because the African American, I'm only calling him African American because I do not want to make it complicated when I speak on this matter. Because I know when you start speaking of these people, we look for things to pick out. Like I'm saying, in my opinion, we should call them American. But just for understanding purposes, we gonna call them African American just for this subject alone. You feel me? But I feel like the African American is being misunderstood, and he deserves more than what he's being given. You feel me? We treat them as a second-class citizen. Then other people come here and want to treat them like a citizen. I'm like, no, they're not even technically speaking, they're not even a citizen. Honestly, they're more like natives. True indeed, and I'm gonna explain myself. The bus fucked up. Now I'm about to explain this. The African American and the white American is a native to this land as the Native American. Reason why they were here before the company named United States of America was created. So if I'm in a if I am part of the creation of a company named USA, you can't vote me out, nigga. I know this ain't no Papa John. You ain't gonna take my company away from me, nigga. You feel me? That's what I'm trying to tell you. The African American was here before the Constitution of the United States was written. So that makes him, he can't honestly, that actually destroy my shit about state ID and everything else like that. But then it's going to be hard to differentiate when you have other people coming from other countries like myself and I look like an African American. You feel me? Like, how do you differentiate the two? It was very hard once upon a time to tell the difference between a Native American and an African American. That's why people be thinking that they all dead. No, they're not. The reason why, because it was very hard to tell, nigga. It was so hard to tell, even up to this day. When you look at it, I'm not talking about the ones that they favor. I'm talking about the black Native Americans that was here. They couldn't tell the difference because the pigmentation was so, it was identical. So it was like, damn, how can we tell? It's like they told by the hair a little bit, but when they started mixing race and everything else like that, it's kind of hard to tell. Go to New Orleans. You're going to see some of them over there and it's going to be hard to tell. You feel me? So it kind of kills my idea. But at the same time, I think state ID is still needed, still required for voters' law. Anyway, the African American was here before the Constitution. I'm talking about 200 years before the Constitution was written. So which makes him, before the United States was even constructed, the African American was laying down the foundation of what America was going to become. So that being said, that makes him by birthright, he is a native to this land and should not be required. Yo, where's my bus at? I see this nigga leaving, and that's not a good thing. This nigga walking. They try to tell me they gonna steal my sneakers, and then, man, y'all can have it, man. Feel me? If you need it that bad, you can have it, man. Feel me? Look at this. It's an indicator. They always try to send messages to you and shit like that. If you need it, like, you feel me? Niggas be hating. It is what it is. Fine, excuse me. So by definition, the African American and the white American and the so-called Native American are natives to this land. Before the United States as a company or a corporation was created, before that shit was created, they was already here. So these people are natives, and they shouldn't even pay taxes, honestly. The people who come to this country should pay taxes to the natives, like a rent, a tax. That's why it's called a tax. You feel me? You being taxed to be here. Which meaning myself too, I gotta be taxed too. Feel me? I'm talking against myself too. I'm being fair in my judgment. That is, a judgment is all about making a decision. A judge makes a decision from right or wrong, or what was not even right or wrong, whether it's like sensible or nonsensible or whatever it's called. Anyway, That's just my two piece on it. You feel me? If I was here before the company was constructed, that make me part owner of the company. Just take a look at the stock market and everything else like that. You feel me? Look at this. This nigga got his socks on and everything. They be doing the most. Anyway, I don't know what to call this video. What is I already had a video like that. What is an American? It's good, baby. So I'm about to get on. Oh Lord, have mercy. I don't know where this nigga going. How you doing? It's a lot of people. It's a whole village. I'm getting in the back, man.
No, I thought you were looking out to back to right the other obstruction.
No, that's the number 4.
Oh,
Deuces.
you don't know